you want to shut the door? So I wanted to get together, because I think we have an opportunity that we haven't had, and I think Eric is going to be here. Mark said that he wasn't going to be here. So I wanted to get Finance Committee together to go through the budget and to kind of check in with what we're going to do tomorrow. So because we had the budget file a little bit earlier this year, I thought it would be a good opportunity for us to go through it, raise any concerns that the collective group had, and do a workshop with him tomorrow, rather than having him just present this, familiar material to us, because I think we all saw his TRICOM materials, and I think most of us have seen his presentation to the select board already as well. I think, his representation to me was that his presentation was going to be very similar, and I felt like we would get more value out of reviewing the budget, surfacing any questions that we had, and bringing those questions to a workshop tomorrow. So what I asked him to do was to limit his commentary to 15 minutes or so, to give us enough time to actually work through any concerns that anybody had with the budget. And I think, the main reason that I wanted to do that is because this is I'm seeing it as our best chance to register any concerns or questions or commentary early in the process, where a lot of the times we get down the road and we're meeting with departments, and now we have to try to make budget adjustments on the fly, where we've got to come up with compensating cuts and that sort of stuff. So that was my thinking around putting together tonight's meeting. So in terms of materials, I did get some written feedback from Mark, so you should all have that. And stapled to that, and right behind it, so Mark's commentary is 3 pages. He split his up into revenue and expenses. Right behind that is the written documentation that I got from Colleen. And she had her own way of organizing it. And then there's a separate packet which contains commentary from Barry. So, question?
Okay, everybody has everything?
Yep.
Okay. So I'm not quite sure the best way to go through this.
Well, I wrote mine as questions for Tim.
Because it's a lot of material.
I've got stuff written out, I just haven't got to anybody yet.
I have a question. So with the meeting that you ideally want us to have tomorrow, is that like, if I have a question like this line item, they requested 5,500, but they're only getting 2,500, like what's being cut, is that the kind of question, or should that be saved for the departments?
That is the kind of question.
For
but
tomorrow?
For tomorrow, but I'm also conscious that, we have 35 or 40 questions here minimum,
Right.
and there's only so much time tomorrow, and there's only so much detail Tim's going to be willing and able to go through. So the reason for tonight's meeting was to try to organize this stuff a little bit so that we can give him some themes.
Okay.
And then within those themes, or topics, I guess, we can go into the individual questions. So that was the purpose of tonight's meeting, is to try to organize so that tomorrow's meeting can be more productive, so that it's not just everybody randomly asking questions about the things that they're individually concerned about, that we can talk about those tonight and organize them in a format where we can give Tim some topics tonight. And I don't want to go into all of the specific questions, I think, because that would just be, I think it would be better to talk through some of those individual questions. So this is all kind of working idea as to how we could do this, but my thought was if we gave him some areas of concern tonight, that we could just hand those off, and then he could think about those tomorrow and think about his approach to those various topics and the way that he's put his assumptions together, and anything that he might be aware of that we wouldn't be necessarily, that's not reflected in the actual budget document. Because I'm sure, you know, there's always stuff that is contextual that you just can't put in the actual document that drives his decision-making. So that's more of what I'm hoping to get into tomorrow, is the contextual stuff. So so that's the way that I was thinking about tomorrow's meeting. And the idea behind having him limit his commentary to 15 minutes was to give us enough time to have a good 2-hour chunk where we can ask questions, we can get into the weeds a little bit, and not feel a ton of time pressure. And also that, you know, a lot of the material, you know, this is a fairly seasoned board, so a lot of the material that he would present, we've seen already. So, you know, we'll give him an opportunity. We do have a public hearing tomorrow, and I suspect we may have 1 or 2 residents or taxpayers show up. And that's required by charter that Tim come and present in a public hearing. So we have to, you know, we'll go through that process first. And Tim will present what he wants to present to us, and then we'll go into the workshop. So that was kind of the structure for tomorrow. Does that make sense? Okay. I'm not sure the best way to do this. Probably, maybe just start at the
Can
top
I
of the
Yeah,
make a
budget.
suggestion?
Yeah, please.
I like how Mark has organized this, and talk
Okay.
about revenues first.
We could use his,
Yes.
as a guideline.
Yes.
And then anybody who we can sort of read through the commentary from other people and register those concerns, and then I can add the questions that we want to bunch into the revenue and expense side of things. I'll consolidate it all into one document that we can use for tomorrow,
Yep.
maybe. Does that work for everybody? All right. All right, so, is there anything that anybody had, before we actually get to the revenue side of things, the kind of preamble to the budget document?
Yeah, I had a question on page 8.
Okay,
Sure, it's pretty straightforward. It references the purchase of the UPS parcel, increased the value by $2.5 million. Is
Yep.
that the town's total assessed value, or is that something else? I'm pretty sure it's not I'm fairly certain it's the total assessed value of the town property, but I'm not sure, that's why I
no, that's the UPS parcel altogether.
Yeah,
Okay, so they bought it for, it says here, it said they paid $10.4 million for the property.
Yep,
Okay, now, is that property split between us and Shrewsbury? Or is that 100% in Grafton?
it is.
The parking lot is in
Okay.
Shrewsbury. The parking lot.
Is in Shrewsbury, so
Okay.
most of the land where the building would be
With the
on is
building.
ours.
Okay,
yeah. My understanding is that the assessor does not necessarily assess at the sale price. The assessor will look at the land and say, okay, based on my calculations, this is worth 2.5 million.
Yep.
That's
Fair
my-
market value. That's the metric.
okay, but why would they say, that if they paid 10.4 million for it, doesn't that make that fair market value?
That's what I thought, that's why I asked her.
I think it's worth what they paid for it.
That's what I
Ultimately.
would have expected.
Okay, so we have a question for Tim and the assessor.
And then on top of that, what I want to know is,
But I
whatever
don't,
that number is, whether it's 2.5 or 10, are we taxing them on that value, and what's happened to the TIF? Has it gone away since they're not doing anything, or is it in place?
they never agreed to it.
I don't think anything starts with the TIF until they start building.
Yeah.
Until the building is
Right.
equipped, assessed, inspected, approved, stamped, then the TIF kicks in.
Right.
Okay, so right now, there's no TIF, we simply
Correct.
tax on the value of the property. Okay,
The un-
so that answers that
Unimproved
part of
land.
the question. So TIF not applicable at this time.
Right.
But now the question, I had the same question you did, what value are we assessing?
Yeah, and my understanding is 2.5.
That's what we need to ask the assessor.
Mhm.
for 10.
So you have to keep in mind that the TIF is going to kick in years down the road,
Right.
which the value is not going to be even at that point enough, as much.
I don't think that the assessment of this particular parcel, though, substantially impacts the budget for this year. The assessment's been done, and I don't think any commentary from the finance committee is gonna prompt a reval,
Right.
because she's made whatever decision she made. So I think that's fine to ask the question of the assessor, but,
I'm sure she has a good reason, like Mary's pretty aggressive with the valuations,
Oh, yeah.
as everybody who has a property can probably attest to.
Yeah.
So there must be some underlying reason, otherwise it'd be higher.
Well, my more pressing question was the TIF. I wanted to know what was going on with that, so.
yeah, I don't think it kicks in until they actually have an actual building on the property, yeah.
Would you count the position summary sheet as part of that, on page 15?
Yeah, but I think we're gonna go into those individual positions, right, so. Can we talk a little bit about, before we get to that, the reval process that happened? So there's language around the reval happening.
Which page?
This is page 8 still. So the assessment, the overall assessed value increased 7.45 from FY19. So they did a reval, all the property values went up. The commentary is, the average single-family homeowner was approximately 5.27 over last year, about $365. So that's the tax bill went up, 365?
That's what they're saying, yeah, I think.
No, it's saying the increase in value for the average single-family homeowner was 5.27%.
That statement just doesn't, that sentence
It's not
doesn't
your value,
make
no,
sense.
it's the value of my house is not 5% of it's not $365.
True.
Now, where are, okay, so we're
It's on
on
8.
Page 8,
page
top
8, okay,
paragraph,
so we're still
Page
on way off.
next to the
Just
chart.
under the UPS.
So but my question is more, does that contribute to new growth? Is that why we get the extra levy capacity and,
I think that needs some examination because new growth, like, there's gotta be actual addition to structures, and I don't know where the definition starts and ends. Like, if you put a patio in, is that new growth? Like, I don't think so. But any increase in, like, a assessed value, it does not count, if it's just the same structure.
right?
But I don't know when does it actually begin for like residential?
So is what we're
Besides
saying that
movement.
that 5.27 increase resulted in additional taxes for people? And then the next sentence, which says new growth in FY20 exceeded expectations, that's just additional development that we had not anticipated. Is that right?
Right. The thing that I would be interested in hearing is if the new single-family homes that are built, they're considered in that average single-family tax bill, right? So if they're largely higher-end homes, would that bring up the average more than the average pre-existing home increase in taxes? But that's probably outside the scope of this meeting.
Yeah, I think what you've seen is the median home value's gone up, and so the median tax bill has gone up as well. So that's
Right.
a good point.
Yeah, so it feels nitpicky, but I feel like the result of this is that people see a given average increase to the average that doesn't reflect what an individual who's been living here
Right.
will see
Sure.
as the average increase among people who have been living here and have not moved homes. So this is possibly, if this idea that I have is correct, this possibly is overstating the increase, but I don't know if it's by like $10 or $20 or like 100, so
Did they decrease, did they decrease the tax per
The
thousand?
mill
We
rate?
did, yeah.
No.
Because
16.50.
they did not?
Yeah, it went from
That's
1666 down to 1650.
It increased, I thought.
No,
No,
decreased.
decrease,
It would
because
have to
of the
decrease.
value of the
Value
levy
went up,
limit
that's why.
Right.
situation?
That's
I
what
mean,
they
Prop
pay
2.5.
their taxes.
Yeah, that's was what I was confused about is, like, the reval, your home value goes up, but your mill rate goes down, so you're still getting that 2.5 increase plus whatever your debt excluded
The levy
Yeah.
limit's still the levy limit.
amount is, right?
Yeah, the rate is just a number that's calculated to balance the equation.
Right.
Off of the total assessed value.
Yeah, the total assessed value and the maximum Prop 2.5 increase.
And keep in mind, they didn't reval the entire town. They do it in segments.
It seemed like they did the whole.
Wait, no, it said for FY '20, they did everything,
I
and then
think-
every 5 years, they're gonna have to, and they're gonna use models in the interim years.
Right, so that's what I mean, they did not complete, each fiscal year, a complete reval. It's a process, it's,
Right, I think this year they actually did though,
I do too.
That's
Oh,
what it
yeah.
says. It says for fiscal year '20,
which this is
Okay.
different. This isn't your typical year for
Okay.
assessments.
okay,
This was like the reset for everybody,
okay.
and I think they had more site visits and it was a much more comprehensive process than they typically go through.
Okay,
So what is the question we're asking, Tim?
Just that whole kind of
That
paragraph
whole
just seems
paragraph?
confusing, like I didn't understand.
Okay.
The,
well, it's almost like if you shift units, he's almost shifted units.
well, the 365 made what is the $365?
I think that's what the average family tax bill will go up, is
That's what I think.
365. That's
Right.
what I remember. I just don't think he finished explaining it, but I
Yeah.
believe that that's what that's saying.
So the home value went up 5.27.
Yes.
Right, again, he shifted units on everybody. He went from talking about
Okay.
the value of your home to your tax bill.
Right. So
Hmm.
we don't need to
with-
talk about
without
that
any
tomorrow.
segue.
I'll just ask him to clarify that statement
Yeah.
because it's
Mhm.
super confusing.
Okay.
It's like he left out a sentence.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Okay, so let's move down to then the revenue section. So that starts on page 10 in summary.
Yeah, I had a question on something that I've seen in past budgets. Maybe somebody can help me out. Down at the bottom, it says state revenue is $1.6 million, federal revenue is $10.9 million. Are we reversed on that?
Yeah, that's reversed. Tim pointed that out in the select board meeting
Okay.
last week.
Because I've seen that in past books. Okay.
Did you correct that in the new version that came out?
I haven't seen.
Is that the
Oh, wait,
new
yes, this is the new version and it is corrected.
Yeah,
Well, it's correct.
yes,
so
it
I'm
is
assuming
correct.
it's the
Yeah,
new version.
I got the newest version,
so
the
keep
one
in
that
mind
got
that,
mailed out yesterday, was it?
So everybody
Yeah,
on,
your flash is
online
not
is
in the
looking at
version.
version 3?
That's the old version?
I am.
Okay, that's fine.
I'm looking at what I downloaded this morning, so.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
the version.
It says FY '21 budget doc final 3,
Yeah, it's version 3.
final.
Mhm. Okay, I can answer.
Right.
and there'll
There
be
was
a
also a
final
final
four.
2.
another one.
right.
There'll be another one, yeah.
Yeah,
There'll be more.
It came through from Becca.
I think both Mark and I had a similar question about the 360,000 in
So
cannabis
did I.
revenue.
Yeah, okay, so let's talk about the cannabis piece then.
Where are we?
Page 10.
Yep.
Paragraph on the bottom right.
Yep.
360K for cannabis community fees.
Yep.
My question was, what probability does he have that we are actually gonna get 360?
So that's in the fees line.
Yep.
We have the fees going from a budget of 194 to 564.
I know that the place that used to be Angio's
Yeah,
went
Yeah.
before the planning board last week or this past week, Monday night, for a special permit, and that's been continued for another 4 weeks.
yeah,
And then the state has not approved their
yeah.
their application yet, so that could take a long time.
Mhm.
Yeah, this should not be in there. It's not
So
even
let's,
close to,
He didn't learn his lesson with UPS.
I agree with that. So then let's talk about,
Come on.
I guess, what our concerns are, so that we can articulate those well tomorrow.
He even said in the State of the Town address that it's very risky and that he would have to take it out in October. So if he's acknowledging that it's risky, why not just take it out, you know? Be excited if it's here in October and put it back, but.
Because then you'd have to balance the budget right now.
Yeah.
Versus in October.
Right, but
That's what it
that's
is.
what he's supposed to do right now, right?
He's supposed to do a lot of things.
No, but I mean,
Yeah,
That's
if
what it
it's
is.
a problem, let's like,
He
let's
doesn't wanna
just
make
look at it.
cuts right now.
So this was one of the main reasons I wanted to get together this early and this kind of aggressively, is to register these type of concerns.
Yeah.
I think we shouldn't include this as an assumption in the budget, that we're gonna get this money. But I wanna have a very well articulated, set of concerns, I guess.
Well, I liked Mark's comments on that, because I agree with him, that application fee from the state could take another year or 2 years, they're very slow. And that's why everybody's complaining that the state doesn't get those applications turned around quickly enough. So
So
I
I
don't think
think,
anything's gonna be ready by July 1st.
You need to say
I
to
agree.
wit, or saying
To wit, to wit.
to wit.
Isn't there also an issue that the state, a state agency is trying to take over
Yeah.
some of the rules for how much you can charge or not charge from the Cannabis Control Commission?
Yeah, it's in
Yeah.
the State House right now. It's the
I
legislature.
thought that was just giving the Cannabis Control Commission more say, I didn't, rather than municipalities, I didn't think there was
in other
another
words, if
department.
what I'm hearing, the way I've heard it presented, is we would lose some of our ability to negotiate and get what we want. It would
Yes.
be dictated.
If that's the case, but they haven't passed anything.
The House
It's all-
passed it, I
it's all
think.
done. I don't think so.
the other
Yeah,
piece-
because David Reading voted against it and sent the,
Oh, that's right, they
Thing
just
out.
recently did it, they didn't do it when it first
The
came.
other piece of it is that if you read the actual community host agreement and how that legislation works, the money is supposed to be used for mitigating costs relative to bringing a cannabis operation into town. So it's supposed to be for safety, for traffic, for road maintenance, for additional security,
Drug education.
Yeah.
drug education. I would be shocked if sometime in the next year, there isn't some cannabis owner who takes it to court and says, you can't just use it for operations. And suddenly, that money just completely dries up for everybody. I see that as a massive risk. I also see, if we're just going into planning, this is the first cannabis project that we've had that's gone into, the special permit process. We've seen how people react to cannabis in Grafton at town meeting, in, the planning board process, in our zoning bylaw discussions and all of that. I can only assume that there's gonna be a ton of community input, if you will, that the planning board's gonna have to react to. So I think
Nature's
it's
Remedy
gonna.
was with planning board, and they got their special permit.
What's that?
Nature's Remedy came and got an extension on their special permit,
We've got an extension on this, right?
so,
And they opened a shop in Millbury.
I beg your pardon?
Nature's Remedy has opened a shop
Aren't
in
they like
Millbury,
on 146, isn't
Yep.
it?
and they're in business.
Can we make a recommendation that when we do start seeing marijuana money, putting it in some kind of a stabilization so that you can draw from it for when they want a new police chief or any of those reasons so that we can just pay for it out of that? Or can we not do that?
What an idea.
We can recommend anything that we want. I think, we know that the cannabis money, even if we start getting it next year, is only gonna be good for 5 years. Right, it's a 5-year host agreement, then the money goes away. So if it were me, I'd rather have it pay for capital, program, or go into OPEB as a down payment for that, or whatever.
It's hard to pay for salaries, because then if you don't get, then
Yeah,
you
you
don't
don't
have it
wanna put
after
that-
5 years, so then you're lost.
You don't wanna put that money into operating
Something's up.
Right,
budget.
but that's
You know,
what's being
one-time
proposed this
expenses.
year.
Dan
So-
had mentioned at the last meeting about the financial policy and how it was against
Right,
the policy, the town's policy as it stands right now, to
Yeah.
use one-time funds for operating.
It's always been that
And
way.
it's always been that way, but I pointed to bringing it up because you guys talked about that last meeting.
We did,
Yeah.
yeah. So, you know, it's one time, 5 years in a row, I guess, is the way that it is, but yeah, it goes away.
well, and there's specifically wording, I forget what the exact wording is, but it says something like, the reliability of new money needs to be assessed and it needs to be considered for one-time expenses before being applied to operating. And I feel like on both of those counts, the reliability is we're reliably going to lose it after 5 years. And I haven't seen it considered. I don't know if it's been considered by Tim, just, you know, by himself or in a small, non-open meeting, like with Becca or whatever, but I haven't seen it considered. So if it has, you know, you can just tell us, but it should be considered for one-time funding, and then the fact that it's not going to continue means it is completely not reliable, so.
So what are you gonna ask Tim directly about this?
So I think we just have to challenge putting it into the budget. I think we have to just kind of walk through everybody's concerns.
We can't be the only ones who agree, who feel that way.
No.
I mean,
We're definitely not the only ones that feel that.
And I would just like to add, if we ever get this revenue, I'd like to see us start building up our OPEB trust fund. I mean, it lasts 5
I've brought that up a
years.
couple times. I think it would be a
It
great
lasts-
down payment.
If it's for 5 years and we could start gaining, you know, earning interest on it, that would be the way to go, but
Yep.
that's just my opinion, so.
Yeah,
Anyway.
I would say, I would completely support that. I would also completely support if we were just gonna put all that money into the capital plan, and not do a capital override, I would even support that. I mean, Grafton has to kind of get by, and so if we could take a few $100,000 out of, you know, to pay for another few years of capital and kind of bolster that program, I'd be in support of that. But I'm definitely not supporting just putting it in for operational expenses.
I have one more point on this. On page 32 in the revenue overview, at the very bottom, there's fees and departmental revenue. And that section begins with, by law, fee levels cannot exceed the cost of delivering the service. And I'm wondering if that applies to the marijuana fee? And like, I'm not sure if that's the same, like, if that's the same kind of fee, or if this is only referring to things like sewer fees, or, you know, the end user fees.
I think it's things like building permits.
Right.
You know, hunting, fishing, I don't know if that's
I
done
think
through the
that's
state, but I think that's what they're talking about.
Okay.
Yep, but again, if you read the letter of the law, it says that, you know, the community host agreement money has to go towards mitigating the cost of having that operation in town.
Right,
So it doesn't fit that characteristic at all.
right.
Is that the percentage of gross sales though, or is that, because there's a separate impact fee, that's just a flat fee?
No, it's the,
There's the tax, and then there's the impact fee or something like, there's
There's a 3%
There's a
on
3%
gross
tax.
sales, and then there's also an impact fee, it's like 10 grand, 20 grand, 40 grand. So my question is that the money that's gotta be earmarked, or is it called impact fee? Otherwise, like, we couldn't even put the 3% money into the OPEB or anything.
I just don't think they're actually monitoring that,
Yeah.
unfortunately. So, that's a good
I
question.
think that's a point of clarification.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure. Okay. All right, so also under the kind of revenues area, so any more commentary on cannabis revenue?
People remind me, so when does he project, has he said when he thinks one of them's gonna open? Like, where is he getting the
sometime
number
within fiscal year '21.
Mhm.
And
So-
that's basically the level of detail I got into at the select board meeting. I just watched the video today, so
from? He's said
Right,
no
right.
other detail besides that.
I
Like, he
thought
doesn't have, like, a
360 was
date.
for 6 months of one store being open.
Okay, so he's projecting that it's gonna open around the new year, and then we'll get,
just in time for Christmas.
and
They
how much
may
is
be-
it, three something?
They may be working on their
360.
building, but my understanding is until that application comes from the state, they can't do any structural work
Oh,
inside.
jeez.
Right,
So, I don't think,
and they still have to go through planning. I mean,
It's gonna be a long time.
they're opening up a new, I mean, we
well, it's
all,
been continued to 4 weeks, so they'll probably get their special permit in 4 weeks.
So we have
But they
three of
haven't
them
heard
in
from the
flight
state,
right now?
so that could be another year.
Right.
What?
We have three of them in flight. We have Spinney, Centec Park, and Anzios.
Nature's Remedy and whatever that other place is on 30, I don't remember what it's called.
Okay.
And Bruce, I don't think he's
And
even sent in his
For
application.
6 months, the clock would start ticking, January 2021. We're saying the 360,000 represents 6 months of revenue. So whoever's going to put something up, they have until like January 1, 2021, and then you get 6 months.
There's,
Yeah.
there's multiple layers wrong with this. Number one, it shouldn't even be in the operating budget at all. And number two, even if you make the assumption that it'll be open by January, just did the quick math, he's estimating $12 million in gross sales in 6 months. Caroline's Cannabis, which has been open for a year, in their first year, I think I read, did 10 million. And that was when they were like one of 10
Yeah.
in the state. You had people coming up from Rhode Island.
Does the size of the store matter though?
It's, I mean, Caroline's is tiny, but they had lines. My point is, it's completely unrealistic that there's gonna be $12 million in gross sales in 6 months.
Well, and
So like, even if you take his assumption that it's gonna open, the next logical question is, why do you think it's gonna be 12 million? Like,
right, and even if you think that's a reasonable guess, you can't claim anything close to a reasonable level of certainty that would justify putting it in the budget. It's just
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
impossible to predict.
And I think that's the main point we should focus on, is like, this shouldn't be in the budget,
Yeah.
you know? That's the number one problem.
I'd agree. So do we want to go down the, question, Tim, about what his, like, basis is for the 360? How confident is he? Where does he get his numbers, his sales numbers that arrives at, 360 in terms of revenue, if they were to open? I mean, do we even want to go down there, or do we just want to say,
It doesn't matter, it doesn't matter.
I mean, yeah, I would say like, unless he comes up with some brilliant answer that we don't know about, which probably isn't gonna happen.
Unless he's
At least
got-
we'll have that in the background, like
Unless
we
he
know.
walks in with a letter from the state saying,
Right.
yes, we're about to approve this.
Right.
But I mean, we're gonna get the same answer as the, what was it, the police cars or something last year when he, it's like, well, I had to,
Had to do with the balance budget.
you know?
well, but the way to balance the budget isn't to have, like, optimism, right?
This is more than optimism, I think.
This is wishful thinking.
Yeah.
Right.
If the 360 is not included in operating budget, it can still be included in capital.
Yeah, absolutely.
So 360 would show up somewhere in the 68 million.
That's right, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. No, we go to free cash, and you could fund additional capital, so if you wanna have a list of stuff that, if you get upside surprises, you can do, I think that's a great idea, plan for that money, so you know exactly what the priority is for capital projects, or restoring services, or whatever. I think that's a great idea. You just can't plan on it in the budget, so. Yeah, that's the reality of it, is any of these upside surprises are just gonna go right to free cash.
Okay.
And then, what's the follow-up question to this? Like, we don't think he's gonna get that money, so what are you gonna cut, Tim? That's the follow-up
Yeah,
question.
Yeah,
I think that's later, because I think there's gonna be other things, like the grant and
Yep.
other monies that he's gonna have to cut other places, so I think that should be like the last question.
He's either going to cut or he's going
Of
to
the whole session
propose an
tomorrow?
override.
Not the whole section, but after we've gone through all the revenue that's probably not gonna come in, then ask him what he's gonna cut instead of each time.
Yeah, I forget who else said it, but I like, the, Mark's, revenue first, expenses second format,
Okay.
so.
Alright,
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe at the end, we can take a step back and say, look, we see significant risk in the approach that we took to the budget. My personal concern is that we don't get an override. The schools have to lay off some positions, and then we're coming back in the fall with another few $100,000 of, budget cuts that we have to find, and they're just not available on the municipal side, so what do we do?
Yeah, I mean,
That's
if
my
we
big
have,
concern.
if we have teachers who have been teaching for a few months already, and then we have to lay them off in the middle of the year, we're gonna have to lay off more people to balance the amount we've already spent on those teachers.
Yeah, so I think
Yeah,
that
that's
has
on
to
the
be
plate.
planned for. So I think that's a legitimate question, is, if we get a lot of downside with your current budget, then, yeah, what are you gonna cut? Like, what's on the table?
where are Mark's comments? I'm not seeing those. Did he send those via email?
There you go.
Yeah, you have a copy
Oh, you
here.
got a copy there.
I don't have this
Right,
in my email.
Oh, because I didn't send it up.
Because it came late, so there.
Sorry, I'm a 2-year-old.
It's okay.
She cries if anything goes wrong.
All right.
No,
Really? So, other things on, in the revenues area.
Yes, the grant for 130,000 for the police chief.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, for the fire chief.
All right, let's skip to that. So,
It's on page 10, very bottom.
yep,
You can't, how can you pay for him with a grant? I don't get it.
so
It
does
looked like it
anybody,
was for
does
3
anybody
years.
know much about that grant?
For years, it's when,
And
so in the
then
fourth year,
what do
what's
you
gonna
do?
happen, what are you gonna do, you fire him?
I asked Peter about getting a grant writer before we got a fire chief so that we could possibly get grants. And I was told that we couldn't qualify for a grant without a fire chief. So to get a grant to pay for a fire chief, that's confusing to me because I was told we couldn't qualify.
Well, we
for a
have a
grant.
fire chief, he's just not full-time. We have a fire chief. Yeah, we have a fire chief.
So then why couldn't we get a grant writer first to help make sure we have things like this in place before we?
It must have been the full-time fire chief.
Yeah, they don't
It
have
must
money.
have.
Maybe that was it. There was some caveat where it was, we couldn't do it that way without. full-time.
Anyway, the point is, to me, unless you're gonna show me a letter that says, yes, you have this grant, we're counting on money that we might not get.
Yeah.
Now, if you wanna tell me that, oh no, this is like the library building thing, everyone who applies eventually gets it. You know, but if you're gonna tell me that, no, 5 out of 10 people applying don't get this, we have no business putting it in our budget.
And nor can
Did
you
you put it in the operating budget?
It's in there somewhere, because it was one of the things
Well,
I
it'd be
wrote
under the
down and
fire
Mark wrote
department,
down,
but
and Barry wrote down,
The
we all
revenue?
wrote this down.
Yes,
I think it's under
page 10,
miscellaneous
bottom,
non-recurring.
red corner.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's in non-recurring revenue.
Yeah, every one of us.
Is this budget a Rob Peter to pay Paul so we can adjust it in October? I mean, Eric brought that up a little while ago.
Probably.
Is that what that is?
100%.
Kind of like,
that's what we
But it
all
happens
do.
every
he's
year.
presenting a balanced budget, is what he's doing
Yeah.
still, he's without.
But that's what he does every October.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering if he's still doing that.
Yeah.
This is
So
not the
that's what's
time to be
happening right
doing
now.
this though, not when
He's
we're looking at it.
Plumping it up, and then once June 30th hits, he's gonna plump it down
Mhm.
or see what comes in. Such as state aid, which is now 300, and he projected it as 100, is it still in there at 1?
I'm sorry, what were you talking about? The what?
The state aid was projected at 100 in his original
right.
budget, and it's, according
Actually
to
came
Mark,
in
was
at 3.
3. Well, and it's still not official yet, but that's what's going on again, I'm presenting a balanced budget as, wow. I thought maybe it would be different after last year. I don't know why. Wow.
Yeah, it's
How is
concerning that that we have to do this same pushback year after year after year, like, it's concerning that we have to be pushing back on this again and again.
It's kind of a waste of
Like
time.
fantasy numbers shouldn't be in the budget. Why is that something we need to say over and over and over again?
Sure, but this is our work this year. So here we are. I get it. It's frustrating.
But
See
again, you
anywhere in
can't
the
use
budget
grant money,
it says the actual
one-time money
piece.
for a salary.
Right, so the question on that, I guess, is, yeah, what do we do next year? And, you know, I guess just the basic, you know, how can
You
we?
shouldn't, but school departments have done that. But they've been, you know, have grant money that has been continuously coming, so they can do that for part-time or
Sure.
for something like that, but not for a full-time position. And
With these,
how is he gonna hire somebody?
And a full-time department head. That if we don't get the grant, are we gonna, you know, cut something else to bring in $130,000? Or we like,
Well, it's in the budget, he put it in the operating budget.
this grant might be for a position for a few years. I saw some other towns get positions for fire departments. There was
I think
a
it
ton
said
of fire
three.
grants that
Didn't it
came
say
out in the
three?
last couple
Somewhere in
months.
there it says
You know,
three.
Boylston that maybe got one for a couple positions.
Yeah, this one I think's for three, for some reason we're all remembering that it says for 3 years.
Has he applied for it yet?
Good question.
I would hope so.
So we have a series
So
of
we need to
issues around that.
dig into that, like, find out why he thinks we're absolutely gonna get it, how confident is he?
And has he
How long
applied
is it
for it?
for, have we applied for it, you know? all
Because
those
if
kind of
we
questions.
haven't applied for it, I don't know why it's in the budget.
Even if we have applied for it, if we haven't received grant money, I don't know how you can put that in the budget. Like, it's just like the marijuana money. It just seems irresponsible to me. And look, if you get the grant, you can always add the position into the budget and say, we got the grant, so we're gonna hire it. I think that's a much better approach.
Well, I
to it.
know that he said in here that Mickey would stay on for 2 years. Fire chief came on. So, I mean, he's probably, if he doesn't get the grant, he's not Mickey still anyway,
Mhm.
Right.
for 2 years, so, but that's still,
I thought he said even if he didn't get the grant, he was still hiring the position too. Thought
With
that
what
was
money?
said at one
well,
point.
it's in the
well, they
budget.
need
We
to
put
cut
it in the
something
operating
else
budget.
Yeah, but
and,
the revenue's not.
Well, the revenues, that's true.
Right, so that's the concern. And I'm also concerned about, like, if that's the approach, we're gonna hire regardless. It doesn't make sense to me that you're gonna hire an assistant fire chief in the same budget year that you're laying off educators.
Yep.
That just doesn't make sense to me. And there's a number of other things, like the clerk, the increase to the clerk's salary. How can you be giving somebody a significant increase in pay?
19%.
There's a lot of
For
things.
an elected position in the same year that you're.
I
laying
have a
off
question
teachers.
about that. I think, because the amount comes out to just under $12,000, and town meeting approved that 1,000, is it like 1,000 per month or something?
1,000 a year.
The year.
Okay, yeah, then never mind.
Yeah, so
But the
that was for
point is-
certifications, right?
But I agree with you, I think this, if he wanted to do this, why did he do it this year or last year to bring her up to speed? Why is he choosing to do it now?
Same with the HR analyst, that's going from part-time to full-time, that's a big
I mean,
bump.
that does, I mean, we
Well,
can get to
well, right,
that,
and
but
it's a
let's
light
finish
position,
revenue.
so if it's about retaining good people, like, we should do it before the election year. Don't do it now.
That's right. Look, I'm all
Right.
about paying people what they are worth,
Yeah, market rate.
but I just think that the message is very confused in the budget right now. We're cutting on the school side, and where we have service improvement and, you know, increases on the municipal side, it just doesn't make sense to me.
So let's put that
to do
under
that.
category of salaries for discussion. Because
So-
there's a number of questions I have.
Yeah.
All right, so
On
that's,
salaries.
Before we move off page 10,
Sure.
Mark has alerted me to something. We have the budget for 2020 and amount of money that we received so far through December, which is 6 months. Some of these numbers are noticeably way lower than what we would anticipate.
right,
Motor vehicle excise, 2,000,008, And
Well,
we're only at
well,
351?
that's because
That's
of when it's
seasonal.
collected.
Is it?
Yeah, remember the excise bills go out, what, in March?
Okay.
Yeah, no,
okay.
that's because of the timing, they only go out once per year, and it's
Departmental
right
revenue.
around March. I'm concerned, as Mark was, about the investment income,
Yes.
which
yeah.
was 65,000 2 years ago, was 38,000 last year. So far this year, we're at 24, which if it was to double would make it 48. So why is he projecting 75?
Yeah, so I think, yeah, those are legitimate questions, we'll ask those tomorrow, and I'm guessing that there's
And then
reason-
that one there may
reasoning
be, and I
behind
can think of some answers, but I'd like to know. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna try to guess for
it.
him.
Of course,
And ditto for both miscellaneous recurring and miscellaneous non-recurring. So miscellaneous recurring was 97,300 for 20, that's fine, okay? Except that's what was budgeted, so far it looks like it's 0,
Mhm.
but we're predicting it to be 99,650 for next year, so what exactly is miscellaneous recurring?
Good question.
And non-recurring, he's got it 215,000, which, okay, so in fiscal year 2019, it was very high, what was it? Only 85 was budgeted for this year, and so far, we're actually negative on that for some reason.
Yeah, what does that mean?
So where is $215,000 coming from?
Well, 130 of it is the grant, isn't it?
I don't know, is it? He doesn't say that, he just says that we're getting the grant. I'm assuming that's where, there's the only place it fits in.
Yeah, that's what, I think Mark asked him because that's why he has it.
Miscellaneous recurring and miscellaneous non-recurring,
I think, no, I think Mark asked, and that's where he put it.
okay?
I believe you,
and non-recurring, yep.
yeah.
Aren't we setting up the run toward an override for starting in 21? Isn't that what this is all about?
What's that?
I thought there was this major initiation of of preparing for an override starting in fiscal year 21.
That is what
Is it-
Tim presented to the tri-committee. But that's not what this budget represents.
Yeah, this,
Right.
this budget is supposed to assume no override. I
Oh,
believe.
okay. Okay, I
And
thought it was.
it's just numbers.
So that's what my big concern is that the schools are at 4.13. Their ask for level service was 5.9.
Mhm.
There are also a bunch of assumptions in here that represent revenue risk. So they're
Yes.
gonna take a bunch of, cuts to begin with, and then there's a substantial potential that in the fall, there's gonna be another shortfall that we're gonna have to address. That's my big concern with this whole budget.
Yep, okay. Wow, we got to page 10.
Could somebody just clarify the 300 versus 100? Like, what are those numbers
It's
for
state aid.
state aid? Like, what does that mean? Like, is that the increase from last year?
No, it's what, I don't have the budget in front of me, but it was projected at 100 in the proposed budget.
The first version?
Yes, and I don't know if the number has been changed in this current one that you're looking at to 300.
So for fiscal year 20, the state had indicated to all the towns, look, we're gonna be sending you a bit more money than we originally promised you.
Right.
And we conservatively estimated that at about 100K based on the information they had. When the state finally came through and said, okay, here's your numbers for what we are in fact going to give you, it turns out the extra they were gonna give us was 300,000, not 100,000.
Yeah, it's
And
like,
that's for fiscal year 20.
it's 120,000
But it's in arrears.
in this
Yeah.
budget. 3.3.
What did you say, Eric?
It's 129 in the
Okay.
budget that Becca
Okay.
sent out yesterday. So, I guess we can ask if that's changed.
And none of it's real yet anyway, is that correct? Whether it's 129 or 3, it's not
Right.
confirmed by the state yet,
Yeah.
Not till September.
until September.
Did
For
you just
20?
hear about the 300K?
Oh, for 20, no,
It's arrears.
it should have been. What?
Where did the 300K number come from, sorry?
Our last meeting, Mark made that statement.
For our assessments, he was looking at those
Yeah, the cherry sheet
cherry sheet.
came out for 20.
For 20.
Oh, I see, so he's looking at what we're actually getting in 20 and then extrapolating, because the actual in 20 is higher than we thought.
All right, so should we switch to expenses then?
So is that question gonna come up or not?
Which
If it's
one?
at 129 right now? It's a big number.
Yeah, I think it's worth asking. I mean, they only have it at 129, so we can say, hey, this year, it looks like it went up by 200K. Are you projecting that again, or is that one time?
In revenue, on page 32, local option meals tax. The question would be, would it make, how much are we actually making on that? Because I couldn't find it anywhere. And does it make sense to move it up to 1%?
You can't, the state caps it at 0.75.
Darn it.
Yeah.
Let's
That I know. The
Okay.
first part, how much are we getting from that, I don't know, but I do know the cap is 0.75.
Okay. Can we cheat?
All right, so we have some salary concerns.
Okay, so we're getting into that.
Are we gonna discuss those in length sometime, the salaries? Because I have a number of questions.
Yep, do it.
So we're focusing on salary for the moment.
Yep.
You wanna just say which ones we're concerned with, or?
Well, start at the
Well,
beginning.
First of all, town clerk's one really bothered me. I just
Okay.
don't understand why we're doing that now.
Yep, and that's the big question, why not?
It could have been, I mean, we could wait another year if you want to bring her up, but.
Or do it gradually, even as a compromise.
Right.
Yeah,
We can probably guess why that happened. It was probably a promise because there was a lot of ink going on last year and the year before in that office. So my guess it was a promise.
So you're at
If
page
there
55.
is
Well,
such a
that's
history
fine,
of
but-
this.
You know,
Well, that's what,
Of
that's what.
huge salary jumps for
Yeah,
people.
there's been
Well,
some people.
history and history in the making here
Mhm.
as well.
Mhm.
You know,
You have-
again, there's a long line of them.
like the, in the selectmen's, the assistant to the select board got a $4,000 jump. Her hours went up, but that's understandable, I guess.
So is that because of hours going up? Do we know what
No, I
you?
think it's the hourly rate increase is what that one was.
I thought it was her hours.
19%.
Yeah, if the number, no, we're at,
Increase to account for hourly
select board
rate
was
of the part-time
15.4.
staff, page 53.
so if it's the
Yep.
hourly rate that's up, but the number of hours is not, that's a serious problem. If the number of hours
Yeah.
went up, that's entirely
There
different.
needs to be like a very good justification for that.
So what does
What is
finance
he
committee
basing
need
that
for
on?
that, right? This happens every year and we
But
want
4,000,
justification for
what's
these
Well,
Well,
things.
so the thing that concerns me is it'll take me a second to find which one it is, but there's another department where a similar increase was asked for and not granted. And that, to do it for one employee, not for another, especially for one who works so closely with the town administrator and not for another, that, I feel like that really requires a good reason that is openly stated, and I'm not seeing anything openly stated, so we can't even tell if it's good, but there really needs to be a good reason for that, and it seems like there should be a pre-existing policy that would determine these things so that there isn't even the appearance of
Favoritism.
of an arbitrary decision being made case by case. There should be an existing policy so you can point to it and say, this is the reason we gave it to this person and not to this person. And I've heard that we had a personnel committee or something like that in the
We did.
past.
And
And,
You're looking at her.
yeah,
Well, there was three of us, but there was a schedule, we had everything worked out, and
right,
I need just.
I feel like that, I'm just
You know.
concerned about, things being unfair in the first place, and then the perception of unfairness, and that affecting other employees, morale and opinion of working in Grafton, and,
And that's why the personnel committee was originally formed at town meeting, because there was favoritism being shown to some people, and other people were getting raises or so little, it was awful. So a citizen's petition was put up to have a personnel committee formed to look at all those issues. Job descriptions, scales, check other towns and everything else, and determine kind of where everybody should be. It's a lot of work.
So was that, at the time it was created, meant to be an ongoing, like a standing committee, or was that created just to
It's supposed
do
be a
that work and
standing-
then?
No,
Okay.
a standing committee.
What happened?
Guess. You can guess.
And they sometimes made unpopular decisions and got absolutely skewered for it.
So, yeah, it just
The position of
didn't like it.
the part-time position in that office has not been filled for a couple of years. That's my guess.
The select.
Yeah.
The selectmen's.
Yeah.
So my question about that is, if they're getting an hourly rate increase, and then the administrative assistant to the town administrator is also getting a pretty big bump because of an increase in duties from the full-time selectman assistant being shifted to them, would those duties now be shifted back to the person getting an hourly increase and no
No.
longer need one here?
Well, the TA assistant, in the October town meeting, she received a,
Can I just address that?
go ahead.
Last year, this was the exact same narrative he gave for the administrative personnel, and she received 5,184 because she was going to be taking on extra duties. He uses the same narrative here and gives her a $6,000 raise, but are there extra duties? Is she taking on more responsibilities? I don't begrudge anybody a raise,
Sure.
but this was given because she was taking on extra duties, but what is this?
I think
I
also
mean,
in
6,500 is,
in October, he did there was some sort of I don't want to say a bonus because that isn't the right wording, but there was something was just added to the salary and then something else was taken away. So something is perceived as being higher, not, I'm just explaining, that was in October. At October time, you knew there was an adjustment in the salary, or not in the salary, in the department. You know, my guess, honestly, I don't know how you can put away for a rainy day, but my guess is that the justification for the part-time is simply that we haven't had any help in 2 years, and, yeah,
what's the
she's-
justification for giving someone a $6,500 raise when the duties and responsibilities are the same as they had last year?
I'm with you. But I think part of that is because something went away and something was added. I can check what that was, or he can explain it tomorrow.
Okay, I'm not getting the 6,500.
But there was a number, and he said that is no longer going to be a part of her pay, salary, not salary, but pay, and it's now just an hourly or something like that.
Well, right now, she's getting 63,000 and he bumped her up to 69,500.
What? Boy, I'm missing something here.
Page 59, Barry.
This is the assistant town administrator.
Oh, I was looking at,
Select board?
the
Oh, you're looking at
selectmen, yeah,
subboard.
page
No, I'm looking
55.
at the
Yeah, there's two of them there, two.
administrator first.
Yeah,
So-
we're bumping
Okay.
between.
So when I was referring to that the department requested an increase and did not get it, is the appeals board administrative personnel on page 113.
She has progressively received raises over the last 6, 8, 10 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
Just saying, I don't know
Not
what's
different.
valid or isn't, I haven't even looked at that yet, but that has progressively, annually been increased.
okay.
It used to be a non-benefits job, it's now a benefits job.
And which job is this?
Appeals board
Zoning
admin.
board, ZBA.
Did you notice any other circumstances where people requested increases but didn't get them?
I didn't get all the way through the
Well, the town accountant,
details.
the administrative personnel got a very tiny raise of $503.
Does she
And
get paid anywhere else, Sue?
not according to this,
Nothing from HR comes back to her?
Nope.
Okay. And Colleen, you said HR went full-time?
Well,
The
she's come for
HR
payroll
analyst.
prep, but I don't think our HR was, she was doing that all along, not HR.
The payroll analyst, is that what you're saying? Is
No,
there-
no, no, I'm talking about the town accountant administrative personnel.
Okay.
So she got a tiny little raise, but I'm not sure why.
there was something going on hand in hand there. But I don't know how it ended up. But Jen was only part-time. Is there only one position in HR?
That I saw that was going from part-time to full-time, that had a pretty significant jump.
Yes.
Wow. So what happened there is the town accountant's assistant used to get paid from there, and it supplemented or augmented her town accountant's salary, position salary, and HR was part-time. So I don't, maybe he can explain that. What's transpired as a result of, I don't
And the
know.
town assessor got $4,500 increase.
Do we wanna walk through all of
Which
these?
is
So we
significant.
keep them all in order? Start at the beginning, identify our notes. Because we're kinda jumping right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, somebody
Oh, I'm kind of
keeping
going
track
down
of
at
So we
the,
started at town clerk, then we went to the selectmen, then we went to the admin.
yeah, I'm going in order here on the.
Do you wanna just start over from the beginning and, I mean, not go as in-depth on the ones we already talked about, just so we can make sure we're hitting everything?
Okay, let's
Yep.
start with the
Selectmen,
select
page
board.
55, department head. It's a 19% salary increase. Woo, I'll take that.
What department are you in?
Page 55.
Selectmen.
Selectmen, yeah.
Select board. Correction.
Um,
And then the town administrator got a
Where's that?
significant increase.
Where's the 19,000?
19%.
19%.
It's $4,000 increase on 25.
What is her name again?
Actually, yeah,
Who,
The select board?
Joanne?
Joanne.
Okay. She got
Okay,
like
so we-
no raise from 19 to 20.
Because she just came on in August.
So we wanted to ask
I
about
believe
that.
it was August.
Yeah,
Okay,
19%.
I'm sure there's an explanation, and then we
Dollar
have-
isn't a lot, but it's like,
I always go by dollars because you can have 3%
Yeah.
and it could be a huge amount. Or it could be
Right.
$336. So I mean, I always go by
The dollar.
the dollar amount, not the percentage, because when
Okay.
you,
no, just leave it, I'll get you later.
All right, so the
next
selectmen
one.
department has the first one, and then what was the second one, the town?
Page
The
59,
town
the administrative
administrators.
personnel for the TA
town administrators.
goes up 6,500.
Administrative personnel.
that's what, like around
Kinda
10,
huge.
11%?
Yeah.
I mean,
Just
if she's
10%.
taking on a whole bunch of extra duties.
It, like I said, it could be the shift and where it was and where it is now.
Well, we need to have that explained,
Yeah.
but still, it's a lot of money.
Okay, so that's 59. FinCom, oh boy, look at all this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that big increase is gonna blow the whole budget.
Yeah,
Um,
break in the back.
Reserve fund, 75 goes in. Town accountant,
Yeah, she got 1783.
page 67, I was curious about the annual stipend for the assistant accountant. It's
There it
only,
is.
well, it was $1,000 last year, it's zero now, so.
So the analyst, the money is going to the HR analyst,
Oh.
full-time part of it.
So can we wait till we get to the human resource thing? I
No.
thought we were on town accountant.
Well, we're
Yes,
walking
he's
through.
talking about the
That's
stipend.
page six, okay.
Oh, on stipend, part,
7.
okay.
There's a
That's
good
part of it,
explanation
though.
of the
Something
68.
else is going somewhere. Because Joan was not full-time.
72, the assessor goes up $5,000-$6,000, a 6.6% increase.
4,500.
Is there an
Dollars.
explanation that we need?
Well, be kind of nice to know why. It's a big jump.
It's a big jump and on a big salary. relatively. I mean, I think she's super duper, but that's only me.
Has she
away
stayed
from us.
stagnant in her, since she's been here? Mary hasn't been here all that long.
Well, 19 to 20 was
1,000,
uh,
1,300.
oh wait, I'm looking wrong. Yeah,
Is he bringing everybody up to what other towns are getting?
I
I don't
don't
know
know.
what this is
It
all
would be
about.
nice to hear that, if that's what
And
he's
did
trying
that
to do.
have something to do with the fact that they did a full property reval and that she did it? I believe in that budget, they took away the, so bear with me, the outside consult people to do the work for her, and I believe that could have something to do with it.
I see.
Is she gonna be doing that all the
I
time?
think she, no, not all the time,
Well,
but
then, does that warrant that big an increase?
I don't know, but I think it may have something to do with a change in the process.
Well,
That's the cyclical inspections
Yeah,
required for
cyclical.
accurate valuations.
Yeah, and sometimes it's in a warrant article, do you remember that?
Yeah.
Sometimes the
well,
money,
most of the time it has been.
yeah, is not seen, so you don't, you just don't see that money in the operating budget, and then it shows up in
Right.
the warrant, which is crazy.
Raise and appropriate.
That-
It shows up as raise and appropriate.
Yes. Oh,
So I thought, yes, she did hire an outside company to do it, and yes, it was taken out as a separate line item, I guess as a raise and appropriate, and now that that is done, so anyway, it would be good to get an explanation of what's
Yep.
going on.
Yeah, it's a continued
Okay.
process, but earlier on in the conversation, I thought Nat said that we did the town was done a full reval.
Yep.
That's a lot of work.
And
But
that
that's
is
giving
all
her
on
overtime,
page,
that's not giving her a huge bump.
Is there an overtime on it?
Yep.
There is overtime on
there
here,
is
yeah.
but that's what he should have done, he shouldn't have bumped her
Right.
up because
Should've
Is
been
that-
right.
is
she
there
won't
a
be doing
huge-
this every year.
Is there a
No.
huge increase on that, Heather?
No,
No.
he actually went
For
down.
overtime? No.
there
Well,
is some
is she-
information on page 73, interim year adjustments, that I believe applies to this.
Uh-huh.
Well, the good news is the treasure collector's salary went down,
Oh,
not maybe for her,
So,
but
Mark, do
it
we
dropped
have-
by $204.
Matt, do
I
we
don't
need
know
an
why.
explanation on
Yeah,
page
I'm here,
73?
personnel.
They didn't hire,
5315?
they didn't replace Joanne's position.
I'd like to hear it.
She retired last February, I think.
She had a full position, the treasure collector, for 84,000 this year.
Say it again.
Sure.
This year, she's working full-time, she has 84,845,
It's,
and then he dropped her down. I don't know, maybe, I have no
How does that
understand.
happen?
Maybe that's all she requested,
Okay, do we have that? Okay.
I don't know.
Well, that's a question.
Treasurer collector,
Wow.
I don't know, I don't know if that's a mistake.
yeah, it looks like a mistake, because for department head, for treasurer collector, right? It says in the little comment, department head salary 2% request increase, so I'm guessing there's a mistake in the numbers.
Yeah, she's getting a big increase.
Yep, she is.
wait a minute, treasurer
Well,
collector?
no, because if you're going from budget to, no, it's not that.
She's been here a year.
Page 77.
She did, this is the
Is that
first full year.
full year?
174.
Okay, let's go back to 74.
Did she come in alone?
They did look at 77.
That's what I said.
77, so what I had on 77 goes down.
Yeah,
The two, like, the. less than
Department head
$20.
salary.
yeah, it goes down a tiny bit.
Oh, wait a minute, yeah, 84 was the budget,
Goes down
and now it's
less
down to
than
82.
That's only $2,000.
Yes, but it went down.
No,
it
it
didn't
went
go
down.
up.
I wonder
Yeah,
if it was a
why?
mistake.
Why would it go down such a
It is a
small
mistake.
amount?
He
It's
said
definitely a
that.
mistake.
Is it?
It's
So
gotta
should it be?
asked.
I don't
Let's just
know.
ask.
I'm
Okay, so-
asking, is
All right,
that
So
a
we have a
mistake?
question
Question.
for Tim on
Is it a
page
mistake?
77 about the 5112 line item.
Yes.
Yep, we do.
Okay,
In Becca's email yesterday, she said she made minor adjustments to the treasurer collector budget.
So here's the actual, this is the
Oh, right.
new
Well,
version.
this is the
Barry.
budget
So it
she
should
sent
be-
out. I don't
Well,
see any.
Let's just ask tomorrow.
Yeah,
I can't see anything.
The administrative personnel, that's all contractual, so not much we can do about that.
Yeah.
The assistant treasurer collector, not $3,038.
But that's more than 2%.
That is more than 2%. So
Could ask about that.
we need to ask about that, right?
Assistant treasurer collector is appointed by the select board?
Yes, she's contractual.
Okay.
Yep.
But that's more than 2%, the 56.
Yep, that is.
59.
And then Amy was just new last year, remember the other person, she wasn't renewed.
Okay, so we have no significant questions on that.
Everybody ready for human resources on page
Well,
83?
page 78, I'd just like to hear an explanation of the 5,300 items.
We're not doing, if those, we're doing salary.
We're doing salaries right now.
Only salaries?
Just salaries,
But I
yeah.
thought we were asking Tim for explanations.
We're just doing salaries now.
We're just doing salaries and then we'll go back to another category and
Okay.
look at those.
Okay.
So whole human resources, page 83.
Yeah.
That's so,
Yeah.
It's going
So apparently she's going from part-time to full-time,
That's a lot
but
of
if you
money.
look on, what is this, page 84, what page are we on? Page 84, right?
yep,
So if you look back up on page 82,
Yep.
the personnel numbers, it says it was already full-time this year. So I wonder if that's a mistake, an error.
you have to look back at our, does somebody have the current budget open?
Yeah, you mean the 20 budget?
The 20 budget,
No,
yeah.
I'm about 21.
And then it says there's additional tasks being taken on.
Yes.
Are those new tasks, or are those tasks somebody else is currently doing that are gonna be shifting?
Good question.
Because I know the HR person is part-time at the moment. Well, actually, we should probably clarify that, because last year with the raises for the town administrator people, they had already gotten the raises from the position that was not filled, and then budgeted to have those raises next year. So I guess we should probably, confirm that this position hasn't already become full-time from some other money transferred in. And then, so this position is,
It's a
assuming
big
we're,
increase.
is part-time.
Well, Becca
The,
is human resources.
Right.
And so
Becca
is Joan.
Okay, so,
So if she's full-time, she's taking on Becca's responsibilities.
and Becca's getting an additional raise of 10%.
Right,
Of how
and this
much?
is a huge raise here. I mean, if she's going full-time, this is 20,000.
Becca's not getting 10%.
That's going.
Yeah,
she
Becca,
did, but
Becca's
she
getting
did.
10% raise.
Last year.
Last year she got a 13% raise, this year she's getting a 10% raise, and when you do the math out, it's a
No,
25%.
she's, I didn't see
She's getting like
10% for her this year.
$1,200
That's it.
raise.
Yeah, no, it was much less than 10% this
Maybe
year.
I'm thinking of the,
Yeah, I didn't see 10%.
Yeah.
Becca.
maybe I'm thinking of
She
the
got it.
administrative assistant.
Yeah, her
I
assistant.
would have jumped
Okay.
all
I
over
think
that.
the
So
select
we
board
have a
assistant, I think.
56% increase for the HR person, because the HR person is going to full-time and taking on additional
But whose
responsibilities.
tasks is she taking?
Is she
Was
taking those
on?
from Becca? That's the question.
I think Becca is still going to supervise. And
Well,
the
I
impression
understand
get is
that, but
Becca is still going to do the interpersonal HR stuff. I have a complaint, I go to Becca. Whereas this person doesn't do that. This person does all of the paperwork and making sure everything is.
But that's what Becca
focused.
used to do, correct?
No, not the last few years.
So who did it?
Joan. Joan does the
So,
work.
okay, so.
Joan.
I've only gone to Joan. That
Joan
was-
who?
Joan Chase,
Oh,
which is why, no, that's, do you know that for fact?
No,
Okay, because Finance Committee
facts are.
used to have an office
I'm a
in
Republican.
conference room F. We got voted out of conference room F so they could have a privacy area.
Yes,
And when I have gone in to talk about anything, I have only spoken to Joan. I have never spoken to Becca.
okay.
She's the analyst.
Yeah, well,
okay.
yes.
So we
She
just need to know what additional responsibilities she's taking on.
So they're listed here as insurance reporting, training requirements for staff, workers' comp duties, records and archives, compliance review, and,
And I'm assuming that is currently being done, so who's doing it?
right, well, it's,
Well, I'm
It
not asking for
says-
an answer, if we have to ask Tim, I'm assuming he'll.
it says earlier that,
What page are you on?
Because if they're being
8-4.
taken away,
Oh, so you're
then
okay.
whoever that person is should either get a pay cut or no raise.
Correct.
Will we
Yeah,
need a temporary
that's the
personnel if
next
they go to
question.
full-time? There's a temporary personnel for $1,500, what do they do?
Well, effective today, I'm looking at the manager
I did-
report, her budget,
Same
the
15.
budget of the administrative personnel is 34,793.
Right.
Is that what you guys have?
For
on
current-
there?
Currently, but they're going up to 55.
But they're going to 55, that's 20,000 and some dollars.
Oh, that's
And I
right.
just wanna know, is she getting extra duties, who's she getting those from, and then what is Becca going to be continuing to do?
Okay, so
That's all.
I'm looking at 56.5. And that's because of the
Yes.
temporary, okay, gotcha.
This somehow is tying in with the town
Well, we need to find out
accountant
how.
assistant, which is probably why she got a lesser raise. I think duties are being shifted,
All right, well, he
and I'm
can-
sure it
But
goes
who
back
is
to
it being shifted from, and is that person getting a reduction?
Yeah, we'll get all that tomorrow.
Temporary personnel and
Yeah.
temporary staff services are, what is that? Under human resources,
Right.
5,100 temporary personnel, and then they've got under 5,200 temporary staff services.
yeah, and then the comment is covers the expenses relating to contracting with a temporary staffing firm if needed. I mean, it's just a more verbose way of saying temporary staff services. Doesn't really have any
But
additional
there's
information.
two line items, and are they distinctly different?
Which
They're
one?
both at zero
In
right now. In the
5,100.
current
Oh, okay.
management report, the 1,500 is at 0%. And
No, and
the
budget was
500 also
1,500
is. There's a 1,500 temporary staff, correct?
right now, and they're
Right now.
requesting, but what I'm asking is, what is
What's
the
the
difference
difference?
between 5,100 and 5,200?
I agree. And, but they're both at zero right now. They're not being used as of
Oh, you mean
February
from
11th.
managed report,
from the
okay, good
management
to know,
report, the current.
okay.
So, there's a missing link there
When was that, what's the latest date on that,
today.
today? Oh, good.
Yeah.
So
Has
if I
that been sent
understand
out to
this,
us?
HR is
I
going to
don't think she
full-time?
sent it out to us, but she will.
Yeah.
I've asked her to.
Could she do that soon?
Yes, so you can all have it.
Yes,
I'm anticipating you'll all have this as a tool for
okay.
when you talk to your
I just wanna
folks.
know what the differences are between 51 and 5,200.
The funny part is that right now, human resources was only to be,
It's travel expense.
was only to be spoken to under Tim's budgeting. It isn't a separate department head. So, there's all these questions, but in other words, it's not assigned to an individual. It's just a big blank discussion. You know, so like you won't know what the town accountant, he has to explain this all tomorrow. That's the only way that you guys can find the missing link. It's a
This-
puzzle.
These reference that the HR person is also handling the school stuff. I thought the school had an HR person.
Where are you
do that.
saying that?
I'm looking at where it says,
They're doing the payables, the
The
payroll
payroll they're
payables.
doing.
They're not doing actual payroll, they're doing what's called payroll payables, which is typically things like your FICA, social security,
okay,
So our
okay,
human
okay.
resource person really isn't a department head.
Right, she's working on
Becca
that
is,
now.
she's just an employee.
yeah.
Okay,
She's under administrative personnel in the
Yep.
budget.
I got you.
okay,
All right.
And the
Got
school
it.
department had an HR
all right.
Yes,
person that they eliminated
okay,
2 years ago.
that closes the loop.
Maybe a little more.
Anybody Anybody know an IT operation that wants to take over the Cogman contract? I do.
And then town clerk on page 92, we've already discussed that.
We jumped. Copiers, copiers. The town clerk.
Don't they, when, the last town clerk was here, wasn't there something like she can set her own salary?
Yes,
I mean,
And is that basically what she's doing? She's setting her own
we
salary?
don't know who's doing that.
But she technically can.
She can do that because she's elected, yes.
Does it
But it
say,
has- but it
is
has-
that what she asked for?
No, I'm just asking, this says salary adjustment I think she requested it to match the market. So she must have done something, I mean, obviously it
She
has.
Does
came in
the
and
TA
gave
recommend
us
it?
benchmarks.
Yes, he did. And I'm just saying, it's fine to match the market, but this is not the year to do
No,
it.
I agree, and that's a big, big jump.
A huge jump.
Okay.
I don't
that's an
remember
issue.
what, it was Maureen, right?
You know what?
Who was the
Kenny.
last one? No, the last one.
Oh,
Maureen.
Donna.
Oh,
What-
Donna was.
Don, what did she, I mean, I know when she left, no, it wasn't Maureen that she had a huge increase like the year before she left.
Yes, she did.
I know why she did, because they obviously average your salary and therefore that's how you get your pension, but, how much, I don't remember, how much did she make? Do we remember?
I don't remember.
Yeah, we'd have to look it
I'm
up.
just curious what her salary was compared to Candy, and then
I
it
don't
was like.
remember. I'd have to go back and look.
All right, so we have to basically ask for an explanation
Yep.
of that. And I think the recommendation would be, we need to bring this position up to market, fine, let's step it up. This isn't the year to give a massive raise to any, I mean,
Yeah,
Split it in two, do something.
2 or 3, I don't know. I don't know what the right number is.
Well,
but-
because the thing is, it's not like she can go and jump and be a clerk somewhere else. She'd have to move to the town, right?
you should get
And
a
hope there's an
job
open-
in
like,
another.
There is no job market. It's not an open market. You have to get elected.
Well, I think
So-
there are a lot of towns where it's appointed as well, but yeah, I mean, it's,
Most of the towns they're elected, but there's a few places appointed.
So the market justification isn't great,
Yeah.
given our
And
fiscal.
for the assistant town clerk, since this is new, he got a $2,398 raise.
I only see 1,000, I see 47, 48,
48, yep.
so it's 1,000, only 1,000. Right?
950.
Yeah. Am I doing it wrong?
Are you
So many
looking at
things
administrative
that-
personnel?
I never, I'm looking at assistant town clerk. What was the increase in that raise?
950.
All right,
Administrative personnel,
$950.
950.
administrative personnel right above that, 5113 is going up more.
Maybe that's what we're looking at, administrative personnel.
That one's going up by about 2,400-ish.
She's union, isn't she?
Yep.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
Oh, yeah,
under
raise the
the-
CBA.
All right, next-
CBA is
Agreement.
collective bargaining, so.
Next one,
We don't have any control.
The assistant town clerk,
2%.
no.
He literally's been on since January 5th.
But this doesn't go into effect until,
Yeah,
so
all right.
It's 950 bucks.
I mean, more than, some people are only getting like 300, so, but again, it's only,
Did he come in, I don't know did he come in,
half like,
his first salary, the salary would come in higher? Didn't they increase the salary?
I don't remember.
Wasn't that at the fall town meeting,
At
they
the-
increased at fall town meeting, they increased the salary to, get a better candidate?
All right, so again, we'll have another crack at this.
Yep.
So we can't go totally down the rabbit hole tomorrow night with everything.
A question on 97, the cable TV. How come
Yep.
they don't include the money that comes in from subscribers as part of the overall revenue in the
because
town?
it goes into its own special account, doesn't
That goes into the general fund.
No, I thought it goes
It
into a
is-
special
It is
account.
not
Their
an
budget.
enterprise fund,
it?
it's
It's not
general fund.
enterprise, but it goes into its own separate fund, that, they have a lot of money in that, right?
Yeah,
Cable?
Yeah.
I'm looking
okay,
at
cable
County
is-
TV
yeah.
97.
It's not an enterprise fund, it does go to a specific, its own specific.
It's all fees from the,
Yes,
And
and it
it's
can
supposed
only
to
be
be-
used for cable TV operations.
right,
Correct.
just for that.
However,
That's why it's not put in here. I remember because when he had come in, I forgot what Bob was coming in to talk about, it was a lot of money in there.
It's probably for capital.
600,000, yeah,
Right.
but they gave it all in the
I think that's how they
cable
built the studio.
Right, they did in the studio.
But
That's right.
the enterprise fund that we do have is included when we calculate out the 68 million. That's included in the 68 million, the sewer operation.
Well, in and out, correct?
Yes,
Well, this is the,
so I'm saying, how come the cable is not in and out also? All the money coming in, all the money going over.
Because a lot, I believe, because, and I could be wrong, I think I think sewer is in and out and it equals, correct?
And cable
Cable
is
does not.
contractual, so is the Verizon, whoever they do it with, and it's all collected by fees, so
Yes,
I don't think it's,
You can ask that question tomorrow. I
Yeah.
know there is an explanation, I'm just not
Okay.
articulating it.
okay.
I just want to bring up some concerns for planning board. 108,
Nothing on conservation, we're okay there?
No, I think that,
well, it kind of goes both ways here.
Whoa,
I think because, are they shifting stuff here?
yes.
They are, but Joe had asked for a staff planner before he left, and he wasn't granted that. The department is suffering because they don't have an assistant town planner, and because they had meshed it with the Concom agent,
Mhm.
they're not getting the hours from that person at all, and Nicole can't get the minutes done, they're way behind on minutes. They're not getting, a lot of stuff done in that department, and so,
Didn't we raise this concern?
Yeah.
When this was in the planning phases? And I feel like Tim said something like, well, we'll try it, and if it doesn't work out, we'll
well, it's
hire.
not working out, because they're behind on minutes, they can't get all their work done. What did I write down
Well,
here?
Leah was the assistant conservation agent, and now she is assistant planner.
But there isn't,
So
it's not translating, with the talent, they're not getting much out of her, if
Yeah.
anything at all. So they're suffering as without assistant town planner. So a staff planner makes sense to me for 35,000. I don't understand the assistant planner, conservation agent, this whole thing. What is this
Sounds like we need
Grafton
clarification.
sustainability and revolving account and all this stuff? What has that got to do? What is this?
Yeah, there's gonna be a lot that needs to be explained here that's not explained at all in this budget.
Do we really need this? Because the assistant planner is not an assistant planner. It seems like that the whole time is gonna be supporting and expanding Grafton sustainability efforts, whatever that means. I have no idea. But could planning department be a staff planner? Yeah.
Yeah, but there's not, he's saying zero, he doesn't.
Yeah, he wouldn't give it to Joe, so. And we have a new
But it's getting.
town planner that's only had 3 years' experience as an assistant planner, and so he's gonna get inundated. I don't know, I just don't think,
So,
I'm just not happy
do we
with
have an interim town planner, is that what happened?
no, we have a town planner.
Effective today?
Yep, he started today.
Yeah, but we had another person named Mr. Scanlon,
He came in just shortly after Joe left, and,
temporary.
yeah,
Okay.
his last meeting was Monday, I think.
Okay.
So that's my major concern there.
There's a little meet and greet thing on Friday, that's why there's,
Yeah, I have to get up there early.
And then the economic development person,
yeah, what is going on with him? Is he on?
why
books
is
or
it in
not?
the budget and he's gonna pay it with free cash?
It's the second year.
I wonder if that line was from an earlier draft that should have been taken out. 'Cause yeah, obviously it's one or the other, not both.
Well, read what he says.
Right, yeah, I think that last sentence, we will propose that the position be funded with the warrant article again, FY '21. I suspect that might be from an earlier draft. and
He's
the
got
decision
the
was
30,
changed.
but it's in the budget.
Right, I
The
think,
numbers are
I
there.
suspect that sentence was from an earlier draft, and then they decided to put it in the budget, and they left that sentence in. But, I mean,
Conversely, they forgot to take it out.
Right, we would all.
right, that's my point,
We
they
would all
forgot to
prefer
take it
though
out.
that that gets paid for out of the actual operational budget and not free cash, though,
Right.
right? So this is
So,
a good thing.
either way, one of these is correct, and one of these is wrong, and we just needed to clarify.
Right.
And then if it's the way we don't want it, we need to, push it back a little.
I'm guessing that that is a search and replace.
I mean, that was under the planning board for the Donaldson, and I just
Oh,
don't.
The way it reads,
down to
it sounds
80.
like he's
Okay,
gonna do
that's
it
moving.
exactly.
Like we
Right.
did last year.
Which, I mean, that's like, it's a smoking gun, like, this is a recurring position, and you're paying it with capital on a recurring second year in a row. Why? Make a cut, or ask for an override.
I don't think I have any other questions on salary after that.
Hold on just for a second, guys, because I'm gonna check on something, because I have a suspicion here.
No, I didn't do
I
it.
have a question about fire.
Go for it.
Maybe
Well,
not,
for salary.
okay. I was thinking that actually he didn't mean for that to be in there, but
Firefighters have a
apparently
lot
he
of
did.
side.
Okay. Though it still doesn't make any
Is
sense.
that
but
adding,
that's
is that
okay.
adding the people in training? though?
Okay, so the staff planner is not gonna be there.
He talks about, adding 56,000, for a full-time fire inspector, 80,000, and then a part-time inspector for 15,000. What, are we getting, how many additional fire positions are we getting? It seemed like just the chief with the grant, but then it also says full-time inspector, part-time inspector, another personnel increase. I think that's just for the raises though, but.
Oh, wow. Do we have a
What
sustainability
page
revolving
were I?
account?
So what are you looking at?
So this is
for
140?
fire?
Yeah, I'm looking in I think it's 139 in the description there, it said, 130 or 140?
130, 140.
Okay,
Page 140.
Yeah, I guess it shows,
Fire.
It shows 130,000 for fire chief.
well,
And-
but then in this budget statement, it says, the personnel line will show an increase of $56,000. The increase is due to addition of a full-time fire inspector at 80,000 and an additional part-time inspector at 15,000, and a 2% increase for all firefighters. So the full-time fire inspector, is that one position we're already carrying for fire? And then it'll go to 2 when we get the fire chief, and then we're just not really accounting for that part-time inspector, or what does that mean? Or is that a wish list what the department actually wants, and it's not really a statement?
I don't know, because the department had salary in the budget, it says for FY '21, there will be a full-time chief on staff. A call chief will stay on for training purposes for the next 2 years. Is the call chief Mickey at $2,000, or is that a totally different
yeah,
position?
$2,000
Doesn't
that's
make
rid-
much.
That's ridiculous.
I know.
I'm like, you know what?
So is the call
Come on.
chief different from Mickey,
It's
or?
gotta be, for 2,000, that's,
I think he's gonna retire soon, so
so that's just gonna be, that's like his gift to the town? Give
So-
him-
I have no idea.
You're saying
I
the
have no
numbers don't
idea.
add up,
No, they
At
don't.
all.
No,
They
no,
don't.
right?
Mm-mm.
So the budget statement lists out a number of positions with dollar figures, and that doesn't match at all what's in the actual budget, yeah.
So you
Right.
think there is, the grant money might be in there?
Oh,
Well, I
definitely
think the
is.
grant money's definitely there, and then some other stuff that I don't understand, so.
Yeah.
yeah, like the call chief, and I don't know what that means.
And I'd be curious, I mean, 2% increase, for the fire, there's something else has to go on with this
Firefighters.
firefighters, so it's more than 2%. It's
Is
gotta be
Yes,
Michael
it
Mills
is.
the call chief right now?
What?
Is Mike Mills still the
He's fire chief.
fire chief? I wonder if he's the call chief, because he gets paid less than Mickey, right?
Mickey gets 2,000, and who are you saying is the, I don't know. There's the
Oh.
fire inspector, which is totally different.
Yeah?
I don't know
We'll
what
see
that
what he
means, we'll
says
have to
tomorrow.
explain that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
My other question would be going down to 199 in the library.
yeah.
Yep.
there's a pretty big increase there too, and then on the professional technical, it jumps from 12 to 13. That's not reflected on the position summary sheet, and there's a big increase there, I don't know what that is.
Is that because of the new library? I'm just,
Yeah, I mean, I just don't,
They did
What
say they were
page you
gonna
on?
need additional staffing.
199?
Additional what?
They did say they were gonna need additional staff for the new library.
But not under PT, right? Is that what, did you say PT?
So, yeah, it said, under the, if you go to the chart, like they have that Excel chart, under professional and technical, that goes up 1 from 10.2 to 11.2. But then under the personnel line, the dollar figure jumps pretty significantly there. And so I'm basically just confused, so that's what I asked. The other thing is the educational supplies for the library, that jumps $11,000.
They have to keep within a thing in order to keep, their contract.
yeah, they're,
Ours.
it's like based on.
Yeah.
Certification.
They have to have
Thank
a
you.
certain
Like,
amount
what's the
of
word I'm
money
looking
for
for?
periodicals and educational, they have to keep a certain percentage.
Of everything.
Otherwise, they can't,
Of
they won't
everything,
Right.
keep their budget.
So it's almost
So
like they're
the
backing into
library
it.
has big explanations for the department head salary.
When is the new library going to be completed, do they think?
Another year. About a
Another year?
I think.
So barely
They just-
FY '21.
I heard early FY '21, or,
Oh,
I mean,
early?
early calendar year '21. Yeah, early calendar year '21, like,
Oh, all right.
Oh, okay.
So part of.
Yeah.
Because they have,
So
it's
if
just that
this
dirt
is a.
sitting there right now, I don't think they're gonna
well,
open it.
they have a big hole. They have a big hole now.
Mhm.
So Colleen, the way I read it was that the budget statement addressed the personnel increases. Did you not read it the same way?
I'm sorry, what are you saying? You read it
The budget statement
Yeah.
talks about basically the desk hours and the number of positions, and they go into pretty exhaustive detail.
Right, so they found the extra 20 hours and 2 part-time and 6 hours, right? So is that what professional and technical is?
Yeah, under personnel, yes, I think.
Oh, and you look at their budget, 5114. It includes librarian and senior librarian staff for that line item, but I don't know how many of each.
But if that's just an increase for 6 months of FY '21, is it gonna be even bigger for FY '22? Because they're not, if, according
they
to
say
Dan, they're
6
not going to
months
be
again?
in until, say, maybe January
Mm.
of next year, that's only.
You mean her whole budget, so it's for 6 months?
Why would they increase everybody now?
Question.
I mean, they could hire some of them in December if they anticipate, but that would be 7 months, it wouldn't
Her
be.
whole budget, 6 months?
I'm just wondering if that increase is,
It can't be, because I mean, it's still
No.
functioning.
Right.
Okay, so if the library director is supervising 15 people, and there are 10 part-time people, right? Okay, then that means 3 people, or 5 people rather, should be the librarian and senior librarian. So that 391,000 or 386,000 should be covering 5 people.
for the FY '21 year.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm just going by her statement.
Why would you think it would increase when they go into the new library?
Well, why is it increasing now?
It says, are you looking at the permanent full-time
Because
personnel?
they're doing, according to this, they're doing the same stuff that they did the
Yeah,
other
if you
library.
It says
read the
includes-
description under 5112,
Yeah,
department head salary, it says, in fiscal year '21, blah, 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 the department head manages a staff of 15 people, right?
Yep.
Okay, so if you go down to 5115, she says, includes 10 part-time people. So she manages 15. If 10 of
And
them are
she's-
part-time, that means 5 of them are full-time.
She said 12 are full-time.
Yeah, so I said 12.
No, she said 12 full-time equivalents. Okay, 15 people, but only 12 full-time equivalents. So
Right.
10 are part-time, that means 5 people are full-time. So that's gotta be, and it says permanent full-time personnel, she doesn't give the number, she just says librarian and senior librarian staff. So that should be 5 people.
But that's what we wanna find out.
Right, but I'm just saying, that's what it should be, so now you have to take the 386, 281 and divide by 5, and you come out with the average salary for those people.
Which is what?
I'll tell you in a minute,
Okay.
I don't reopen my phone.
Well, what you're saying is basically 400 divided by 5, right? Is that what we're saying?
So 77,256 per full-time employee is what I'm coming up with.
Say that again?
77,256.
Okay.
Which is about 3,000 per.
Does that include
I
her?
thought the foot space was
No,
gonna.
her
the
salary is
footprint
84,900.
increasing. Dan,
4,000.
the footprint is increasing.
Yeah.
So
That's why I
she's
thought they were gonna
head
add more.
librarian, and then there's librarian, and then there's senior librarian.
That's what I'm getting
Right.
at.
And then there's
I'll get it
peons.
now.
There's
Now, again,
peons.
I'm going to assume that some of these people are a little bit more, some are a little bit less, but roughly 77
On average,
per.
right.
I didn't realize there were so many highly paid people in the library. But they do, I mean, I know they all have degrees and probably a couple of them have master's degrees.
So what are we gonna ask tomorrow?
They have to, can they clarify the head count? I think that's what we're asking.
Yes.
And he might not know that. This might be a question.
And just as a point of reference, if you take the fiscal year 20 budget, those people were making 73,256. So they're getting kind of a sizable increase.
Unless somebody moved into that.
Is that something we need from Tim, or is that more of a department discussion?
Probably
It feels more like a department discussion to me.
Yeah, they're getting a 5.5% raise.
I mean, I don't know that he would know the details.
Well, I think we should go to Tim,
Yeah.
the size of the increases. I mean, we can get the explanation from
Yeah.
Beth, but I think we should make note to Tim that these are pretty high salary increases.
Page 201, I count 7 full-time and 7 part-time.
Okay. Again, I was just going by the narrative.
I was, got the little PTEs all mapped out here on the org chart.
Okay, so you're, let me see,
Each
201.
above.
okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
And I think there's 6
Seven.
people in that 5114, because it's, if you're looking at the full-time,
Yeah.
there's 6.
The-
Mm.
I'm
the
I don't
org
know
chart
where the
maps out
administrative
7,
assistant fits in,
Right.
but I'm
I don't know.
assuming.
and the org
She's
chart maps
full-time,
out
and I believe
7
everything-
part-time.
Well, yeah, I would think that she'd be here.
Chad's up about right.
So.
So I'm assuming
Whoever
this
does
is
library should ask about the count.
Yeah.
her going into a new building. I'm assuming.
I think.
10 part-time? That doesn't-
Yeah.
I only count 8 part-time, but.
Yeah, I'm using 201.
Yeah,
I think
I'm
she's
the same
adding
way.
Yeah.
I think she's
1,
adding
2,
staff.
3,
She's adding
4,
staff.
5,
Yeah, a
7.
sizable number.
Well, if the footprint is increasing, I would imagine she needs it.
Mm.
But I just was wondering why it would be
Here,
now.
it shouldn't.
Well, if you
If
can't
it's
baffle
not
them,
until
that's
next
what
Unless they're
really
tidying,
baffles
unless they're
me.
planning to moving in of January 21.
Mm-hmm.
Then
Well,
it
if
would-
they are, then is that a 6-month position? Are those the increases, are they 6 months? So my point is FY '22 is gonna
That's a
be
good question, I don't
a
know.
huge increase.
They are.
Yeah, I
So
mean, that
it
could be
seems like
divided
the-
by 6 instead of 5.
It seems like the sort of thread that connects a lot of the discussion around salary is that we don't have a policy that determines how and when and why we give raises, okay? Because this is something that's a recurring theme. And I wonder if that is the ask, because Tim's gonna have explanations for each of these, and we kind of go through this every year, but every year there's also inconsistencies that we note, that you alluded to earlier, which is some people get it, some people don't, some people get a lot, some people get a little, some people get none. So what's the
consistency?
what's the plan? What's the policy that governs salary ranges, bands, and their increases?
And I feel like the key is not that, like, we're definitely not accusing anyone of making, making decisions based on favoritism, but the problem is that no matter how these are given out, there's going to be some plausible narrative that somebody could use to make an accusation that there's favoritism going on. And without a policy, or without some open deliberative process, you have absolutely no defense against that accusation. It's just, well, you're wrong. That's really all you have, and it's really, like, what if it happens to be that a person in a protected class doesn't get a raise, and another person did? Like, we could be open to a lawsuit, and it even could be that there is merit to that. Like, it could be that somebody who actually was discriminated against, and without a policy in place, there's no way to disagree with that.
And I like the statement that Mark, well, overall, there appears to be no standard for giving raises. I would like to see a formal plan put into place to justify increases.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
I agree.
So is that the ask?
Yeah, because I think.
There are some areas clearly where there's some significant questions, things like the clerk position. I would put that maybe in a slightly different, when we start talking about 2 versus 5% and some of these other things, it seems like a little bit of a different category for me. But yeah, so is the big ask that we want to see a policy and or a plan for that? Good. Yeah.
Yes, I think tomorrow, because when we talk to him tomorrow, I don't think we can get into the nitty-gritty, because I think that's what the Saturday sessions are for.
I agree with that.
I don't think
agree
we
with
should
that.
be going line by line tomorrow, I think, because we'll be here for like 5 hours.
Right, well, and that's why I wanted to kind of try to batch these a little
Like,
bit.
I like discussing what we had discussed about the revenue, because I think that is something that needs to be brought, you know.
Yeah.
They're larger issues, they're not just, we're not going,
Line by line through this
Correct.
budget.
but I think when you're discussing like salaries and expenses, I don't know that we need to touch upon the expenses tomorrow unless you see something blatantly crazy. But I think, like you said, I think if you do a blank statement about salaries and then gives a few examples,
Yeah,
maybe that will.
I think for tomorrow, it'd be good to mention patterns that we're seeing. Like,
Correct, yes,
we didn't get to
yes.
it, but I noticed a lot of the budgets have cuts to overtime, and a lot of the budgets have cuts to office supplies. And we're talking hundreds of dollars in each case, but I'm concerned that these are, has there been kind of a blanket cut to overtime that hasn't taken into account whether they're going to need overtime, and are department heads expecting to go over on these budgets, or with their supply? Like, I think we need to ask about things like that.
That's what you asked the department heads about.
Well, no, I think they request, there's a pattern of department heads requesting an amount, and then that amount being cut in Tim's budget. And I think it's something we should ask Tim about, what the, process was for determining those cuts. I guess I'm just concerned that it looks like it was a broad thing and not a specific thing, like, well, they don't need this many, folders
I think
in this
when we,
department.
if, once we get, the report, I think that'll kind of help what you're saying, because I think it's, you need to look at the actuals.
The management report, yes.
um, Because I think, and I know we've gone through this year upon year upon year, they just basically take one year and slap it into the next. They don't even look at their
Actuals.
actuals, and it drives me insane that they don't do it. So, and I don't know that they're doing it now, but I think maybe he said, well, you know, let's cut where we can cut, and I think a lot of it is supplies and overtime, because, you know, I don't know about you, but once you're here at like, 4:30, this place is a ghost town. So they probably, so I think that might be why.
I know a few department heads told me for the past couple of years when I asked about their cuts, and they had mentioned that they were told to cut a certain amount out of their budget, care where, but
Correct.
they had to just cut out like 1,000 or 2,000, and they chose where to cut.
Mhm. Yeah, because like a lot of years it was, oh, let's just be level funded, and then now I think they're
Yeah.
saying, well, you know what, you need to find a place to cut 2,000, so find it.
Yeah.
And I think now they're almost, and I don't know if he's doing, if they're almost forced to now look at their budget versus actual, whereas they weren't before, they never were. It was always level budget, level funding,
And
and
then
they
they
were,
just
they would
increased
just they would increase their salaries and slightly decrease something else, but that's it. They never really looked at their actual budget, ever. There was maybe one or two department heads that actually looked, but otherwise, it was good last year. And I know a lot of them do it because they don't wanna, if they did ever need it, they don't wanna ever have to come back and ask for it.
Right.
So, again, I haven't looked at the management report, so I don't know. I haven't looked at everything like line by line to see, but I suspect, and I'm just guessing, again, this is just me going over, doing this for 10 years, I'm just thinking that's, might be what's going on.
Okay.
But yes, I think we could ask that question, and he could back us up, or he could say something completely different, I don't know.
Okay. All right, so we want to cover the specific revenue pieces
Mhm.
that were
Yep.
discussed. We want to take a step back, I think, from some of the individual salary concerns.
Right, I think you just give a general
I
statement
think
about the
so.
salaries.
And if he asks, well, what are you talking about, then you can come
Then you
back
can
and say,
give
well, okay,
example.
this is what we've been noticing and looking at, look at, you can pick a couple of glaring ones.
Yeah.
That we've highlighted, and yes, he will have explanations for them,
His office.
yeah, exactly. And I'm sure he'll have, but again, I think we have a point.
All right, are there,
And then ask how what his directive was to the departments. Did he say that he wanted to see level funding, certain amount cut? I don't know.
I don't know, he usually sends a letter out.
He does, and I didn't see it.
But I didn't see it this year.
Yeah.
We received nothing.
Right, so like, we used to get a letter, he used to send a letter
Yes.
out to all the department heads basically saying, this is what I want to see. And it, in not too many ways, level funded a lot of the years. So we haven't seen that letter this year, so I don't know what.
He may have sent it.
It just didn't include us.
And it didn't come through to the finance committee, but I haven't, nothing has come through, or else you would have seen it.
I think our biggest discussion with him tomorrow evening will be revenue.
Yeah, I agree.
That's what we'll concentrate on most, I think, is the most important part.
Yeah, revenue and I do agree on the salaries, I think that is.
Yeah, I think
Every
we
year it
mentioned
comes up,
salaries.
every year it comes up. I think when I first started, I don't think we even had solid numbers until like the second
And I
or
mean,
third
there's things
Saturday.
in the budget that I wasn't happy to see that have been taken out, like the 2 police cars this year.
But there were absolutely, and there were times when we were right into the public hearing,
Yeah. And
when
when
the numbers weren't solid.
actual salaries, yeah.
You know, that's the scary part of waiting until, the warrant comes out and you have to deal with that one article. And that's why the column thing never worked.
Mhm.
Which, by the way, I've looked back to 2002 and we haven't got a column. So,
Once you get away with it, soon after you arrive.
Probably,
I thought so too.
he must have.
I can't believe that they ran away.
Do we want to ask about EDC at all? Mark was saying he didn't see it at all funded. Do you wanna know?
EDC, the economic development,
Yeah.
and that's in planning board.
Oh, it's planned.
It's under planning. And it's in there for 30,000, but he's made a statement he will pay for it for free cash. So
Which
don't
is-
put it in the budget then.
Ugh, I just,
Don't put it in the budget if you're gonna pay for it for free
I
cash.
agree.
We, the finance committee asked him not to do that.
Last year, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Should we bring that up tomorrow or not? Yeah.
Well, I think that's a good example.
Well, I think
If you
that's a
wanna
good
talk
example of
about-
the column, right
Yeah.
there. That's a very good example, as you folks go down, I think right now, you could create a column already and pop some numbers in there that would change, the balanced budget to a not-so-balanced budget.
Well, I think
So
it-
Tim did commit to putting the finance committee recommendation
Right.
column in.
With a yes or no, I didn't understand
But I
that.
think we have the issue of salaries, which is one issue, and then we have an issue of positions. That you've got fire chief, the economic development person, and some of those other positions. And
Because we don't know the detail, right?
we don't know the
Right.
detail form, and if the,
We
you
can't
know,
put
a
our
grant
recommendation,
and
yeah.
free cash isn't the way to go for things, so.
That's one of my major concerns about salary too, is that, I guess we can, the first is that there is no policy for raises, and the second is that a lot of these positions are funded with one-time funds.
Right.
That's a major concern with me.
So the pattern seems to be that we fund with one-time funds for a period of time, and then it,
In
Like-
years that we are struggling, yes, that's what he does.
like economic develop, our,
Especially,
Economic de-
EDC.
not EDC, but yeah.
The fire
The
chief
fire chief right now.
Yeah, the fire chief.
And I
and
know we-
economic development, free cash.
Right, so we do that for a couple of years, and then we include it in the budget.
Okay, but he's doing it because we're, in my mind, I think, like, you know, in years that we're struggling, he sort of just kind of bumps up the revenue and then throws in this, oh, well, we're gonna get a grant, but again, as we discussed, we don't know that we're getting that grant.
Right. Yeah, no, I feel uncomfortable with that as well.
Or the 360,000 for
Yeah.
cannabis.
Yeah.
so using free cash, to take care of EDC, for
It's
example.
another example of a big no-no.
It is a no-no, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like against financial policy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
He puts it in a warrant article.
Well, if it goes into a warrant article, does that rectify it?
No.
No.
Okay.
Are we gonna have an EDC, coordinator, or are we not? Put it in the budget.
Is that why we
Should be
don't
fine.
have a conservation agent?
But he did move that to the budget this year.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, but he says he'll
But-
pay with the free cash, so
Well,
he's gonna take it out.
I think the
It's
language
happened
is
now.
just wrong.
Yeah. it's-
Yeah, we just need him to clarify that, and then if,
We'll check on that, because
Well, the way he did his numbers, it looks like he's added it in.
he has.
Okay, yeah,
Right.
according to the numbers he's presenting, so that
That's
looks
why you
like
have
the
to run
normal-
all the numbers
Right.
and when you're looking at your departments. I always run the numbers to make sure
Yeah,
that they add up correctly. Sometimes there's mistakes.
I had two other questions, just he's proposing a minimal increase in health insurance, I just wanna know why, to make sure that that's realistic, because typically, and I'm assuming that we have a contract, so this should be a relatively good number, but that just seems like 1.5%. Oh my God, most people would kill for a 1.5%
I
increase in
think he
health
said
insurance.
Harvard Pilgrim came in without an increase.
Okay, if they did, that's great, I just wanna confirm that though, to make sure that that's a good number.
That's what I heard.
And my other question was, and again, it doesn't affect us a whole lot, but I'm just curious, when he gives us the comparing towns, Auburn's in there twice, with two dramatically different numbers.
Oh, what is that?
Auburn.
Auburn.
where is this?
Hold on, did I write this down on what page it was on? You know how he compares us to different towns, page 31. So, we're supposed to look at the other towns and either feel great or bad depending on which town. and Auburn's in there twice, so it goes Ashland, Auburn.
So Auburn can feel great and bad.
That's right.
And then Bellingham, Grafton, Millbury, Auburn again. I wonder if that should be Northborough.
Or Auburndale, or something, I don't know.
No, I bet you, because Northborough is one of the other towns, I bet you that's supposed to be Northborough. Because
Yeah.
alphabetically, that's what it would be, and those numbers look like they would be Northborough numbers.
What page is
Um,
this?
31.
Yeah,
I
it's very
think it's
possible.
been
Yeah, I
fixed
have a
in the
feeling
newer
it's a
version.
mistake, and that should be Northborough rather than Auburn. I only just realized that.
Yeah, the newer version only has one Auburn.
I have the newest version.
The
one
one,
you sent out,
version
right?
3?
When you sent
Yeah.
out to.
Oh, the table, I was looking at the graph, okay.
Yeah, no, in the table.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I have a
It's
feeling
two
that
Auburn.
should be Northborough.
And the savings that he got from the health insurance,
Okay,
he passed on to the school department.
yeah, if he had, that's great. I just, again, I
And I
just
don't
want
have
to
a problem
confirm.
with that, I just hope that they understand that that's not gonna be a reoccurring
Yeah.
thing.
Not all of it though, right? 230 of the 300 something you say? You didn't give it all to the school.
No, but he raised their thing up, but still, that's money that,
Yeah.
it's not, I don't know where they're putting it. If it's gonna be for one-time expenses or what, but the savings are not gonna be recurring every year for them, so they need to be cautious about that.
I think the schools are restoring positions.
They're restoring positions.
Yeah.
To cut them next year? Wow.
Was it FY20 money?
No, FY
I think the
21.
expectation,
The savings for the insurance.
Okay.
I think the expectation is if we don't get an override this year, we have to have one next year. So, and if we don't get one next year, yeah, they'll have to cut positions.
Did he say where he put rest of the savings then? How much did he give the school? I don't
I
remember.
thought it was 230.
And then he saved what?
I'm not,
Total.
I don't remember the
Okay.
exact total. They got a bulk of it, but he didn't give it all.
Okay.
230.
I wasn't
I
sure.
remember, and that's why I remember. What
Is
time
that-
do you go to the dentist?
2:30.
Sandra.
She goes everywhere at 2:30. Tommy
Got
does.
married at 2:30.
See you 2:30. Okay.
So I'd like to get an updated, I guess, perspective from Tim on where we stand with the override. There's been a very, I don't know, it's disturbing to me at least. You know, our last conversation publicly in the TRICOM meeting was, you know, Tim saying the town can afford an override, we've done everything we can do, we need an override, and here's some options. So he kind of put that before the select board, and that's the last I've heard of it.
I would like to know the status because there's a lot of anxiety and uncertainty out in the community concerning that.
And in this room.
And it, well,
I think
that's
discussed
needless to
that.
say, but I would like to know exactly what the status of that is.
I wonder if they got an update tonight. They had a meeting, right?
Yeah.
The selectmen
They
were
did.
gonna be talking about the budget and line items, I don't know if they were gonna talk about the override.
Over
Was
on
that
the
the
agenda.
agenda?
Was it on the agenda?
They were talking about it when I got out of school committee, they were talking about it.
They were.
Yep. Ed was talking about, I only caught a little bit, Ed was talking about counselors at the high school, how bad it would be if they lost those
It'd
positions.
be awful.
Yeah.
They're already overworked.
That was the only,
So when
Piece I
are we
caught,
meeting
though.
again for a track committee meeting?
March 5th.
Is that confirmed? We'll know tomorrow maybe.
We should, know, I don't know. I'm trying to keep up.
Yeah.
Doing my best.
Well, with school meeting tonight, maybe they talked about it, right? And then maybe
Yeah,
the select board.
In
Talk about
all
it.
of the emails, I haven't seen anybody say no. I was looking for something a little sooner, but there was just, it's challenging to get these three boards together. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, the only slots that we had that were potential opportunities, we would end up in another hour time slot in a school committee meeting, and I didn't feel that that was really appropriate. It was gonna be particularly beneficial for us to do that, so, we're in early March, unfortunately.
I mean, I feel like a month ago, we were saying March 3rd was too soon. So now, I guess we would say April 3rd is too soon. And we're gonna wait wait another month and then say May is too soon? Like, I just don't feel like there's, I don't feel like there's, you know, the will to do it from all the parties involved.
Yeah,
Like, I feel like there's no urgency, and the only explanation I can think of for that is that not everybody, not all of the stakeholders want to do it.
either they don't wanna do it, or they don't, like, really appreciate how much work it is to do, and what's required to do it. I don't get it, and that's what I'm, you know, that's why I'd love to check in with him and see, I think we all need to catch up on what happened with the select board tonight and see where they're at.
I think there's a couple of boards that are willing to talk about it, go forward. I think there's a lot of consternation, probably on the select board, because they're uneasy, because an election year is coming up.
You
I don't
just-
know.
You just have
Well,
to
every
make a
year's an
decision.
election year.
Huh?
Every year's an election year for,
Well,
Select
somebody,
board.
but they're,
Right.
you know, but still, I think they just,
I just feel like from my standpoint, I would like to understand what the budget strategy is. And I don't understand what it is right now, because we have the schools being given far less than what their request was, at the same time that we are hiring additional people, getting raises.
Right.
That just doesn't make any sense to me.
No.
So I'm trying to figure out, as a town, what's our budget strategy for this year? Is it override, no override, and if it's no override, we haven't really examined I don't think we've really examined the town side of the budget to see if we can, because I think if we don't get an override this year, or one isn't proposed, we're gonna have to go for one next year. All of the projections show us having budget shortfalls year after year, and
well, I would have liked to have seen a scenario where, in our revenue side, if we don't get this revenue in, what is our budget gonna look like for that year? And what will we have to cut? And then, if we do get it, then what will we look like, you know, for the next 5 years, so.
Well, this is
Right.
the other thing, is let's assume that everyone agrees, just for sake of argument, that, okay, yeah, we need to go for an override, just because we've got a problem here. How much time does it take to put together the right override? In other words, this isn't just a yes or no. Yes, we need an override, go. No, once you decide you need an override, now you've got to sit down and do the hard work
Right.
of, well, how much of an override? What are we going to cover? The last one was finally hammered out, you know, a portion to the schools, a portion to the roads. That wasn't done in 20 minutes after somebody said, yes, we need an override. So again, it's not, you know, I think some people have this, oh, we'll make a decision yes or no, and once we say yes, we just, okay, let's go get it. And I don't think they recognize the amount of time that has to go into creating the override before you can go out to the town and say, here's what we want. You can't just say we want an override, because the first question's gonna be, for how much?
Well,
right,
exactly,
well,
and you have
and then
to,
you have to actually put your budget together
yes,
based on the override scenario. So it means going through every single line and redoing the budget for a new number.
and that means forecasting where you wanna be in 5 years.
Oh, God,
Right.
things like that.
You know.
No, you're right. I mean, last time we did this, Tim did a 10-year projection
Yeah,
to figure out that
What we needed.
what we needed for that 5-year plan.
Yeah.
You have to do that.
What
And
is
then
the
you have to-
working group doing?
So the working group, the idea behind the working group is that they would work through a no override scenario to
Mhm.
try to minimize the cuts across the board.
who's the working group?
So the working group is Mark Haddad, it's Heather Riley and Donna Stock, and administration and superintendent. So the idea is that they would get together and they would put together a budget that would get us through to next year, without, hopefully without laying people off, right? Because,
without laying people off and without an override?
and without an
I
override.
don't know how you do that.
I don't know if you could do that either, but here's the
I
thing,
mean,
is,
yeah, I guess we gotta try.
Unless
Well,
you
yeah,
go look
obviously.
at it, you know.
Yeah, they gotta give it.
Well, I feel like that's kind of just Tim's job in the first place, is to, like, his job is, he keeps saying his job is to give us a balanced budget.
isn't that
Well-
on the school side, is that what they're doing it?
So why can't you just work with Jay on that?
It's putting everything on the
Everything.
table.
I think everything, and I think it needs this
I don't know how
working
you can
group.
be laying teachers off and giving people
Right,
20% raises.
but I think this working group needs to look at
It's
the
madness.
whole operating
Yeah.
budget. And you can't do it, just have Tim do it alone, because you need all these other people with input to talk about it. And I think the working group is a good idea.
But
If they meet.
I
Right,
don't
if
know,
they
have
well,
to
I don't
work.
know if there's enough time for that group to do its work.
There's
Um,
not, well,
But the idea was that it would be small enough so that they could kind of
Right.
self-organize.
I mean, it's been a month since we said we're concerned about the amount of time we have. It's been a month, and I don't see any progress having been made. And, like,
So in
Is
this,
that
just in this current budget, and I didn't get the school part, I admit is the part that I didn't get to go through as thoroughly yet. Like, how many people are laid off for next year with this budget?
Today,
Yeah,
4
okay.
is I think the proposal.
And 11 next year, so 15 total.
Right, but I'm just looking at, so that would be for 22.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, this override is for the whole town, it isn't just the school anymore. You just can't say it's the school anymore, it's just not. I mean, we're looking at some real issues on the rest of the budget.
Yeah.
Right, all right, so we'll catch up with Tim on what his thinking is on the override, and kind of where that's at. Maybe he can give us an update from tonight's meeting, would be a good kind of way to level set this group. Any other broad topics that we want to bring up tomorrow?
Yeah, revenue, salary, override, I would say the three big ones.
Okay,
How do we wanna, like, should we assign who's gonna ask what? I just don't want people to be like,
Well, I think
Well,
that's,
it could-
that's
yeah, I was
Matt's
gonna
Yeah,
say,
I
job.
think you can all go through him.
I mean, we could chime in, but I think that's Matt's gonna be,
Yeah.
Matt can bring up
Leading.
the general topic
Right,
and
yeah.
then people can ask.
we
their-
never did get around to capital, but.
yeah, I know. I think we should table the capital discussion.
well,
Well, we're gonna have to. It's
9:14, so.
Getting
So,
there.
well, yeah, we'll tackle that another time. Yeah, I'm happy bringing up the broad topics. I guess the way that I would ask is, we try to not nitpick
I agree.
and not get too much into the weeds. Let's try to keep to the broad topics. I think coming out of the meeting, we should probably work on a statement to the select board to give them some guidance around what our discussion was, what our observations on the budget are, to kind of,
You wanna set the,
want to set the tone
Yeah,
and,
I
and,
understand, yeah.
and let's cover the big topics that we want to see addressed.
good idea.
And we'll kind of hand it off to them and say, look, here's our observations, here's what our discussion with Tim,
Yep.
and here's what we want to see. And kind of leave it at that. And let's not try to cover the same ground over and over. So when something's been kind of discussed and agreed and whatever, let's just.
And I think we should need to be factual and truthful about where this budget stands. Not-
Absolutely, so look,
Not chocolate coated,
yep,
you know?
no, I don't want to sugarcoat it and I don't want to
That's
pretend.
the word I was thinking of, but
I
I
like
like chocolate
chocolate better.
better.
We like chocolate
We
coated.
like chocolate coated.
Um,
Because if we don't do that, we're gonna be spinning our wheels again. We just,
Yeah.
you know, and we've been doing that for a long time. We're lucky we got through this year
Oh, yeah.
after the override. I mean, by the skin of our teeth, we're doing this.
Yep.
And something's gotta happen soon.
And we will potentially make it through next year by the skin of our teeth, but then it's really gonna be bloody.
Okay,
All right,
very
till
good.
tomorrow.
All right,
Thank you, meeting adjourned.
thank you.
Okay.